Well, good morning. I'm Representative Dave Pinto, and I'm the co-chair of the Legislative Task Force on Child Protection. I'm calling this meeting of the task force to order, along with my co-chair, Senator Mark Johnson. We have only a couple of us in the room here. We have several folks joining us via Zoom, and I think we'll start by having the call, the roll. So, Mr. Doslin, I think you were the one going to be doing that.
Morning, everyone. Representative Pinto, co-chair.
Present.
Senator Johnson, co-chair.
Present.
Senator Housley, vice co-chair. Representative Moran, vice co-chair.
I'm present.
Senator Champion.
This is Shamika Bogan from Senator Champion's office. I'm here on Senator Champion's behalf.
Thank you. Representative Hassan. Senator Hoffman.
Present.
Representative Kresha. Senator Matthews. Representative Mueller.
Present.
And Senator Port. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doslin. I should note we don't plan to take any official business today, and so we're okay having a smaller crowd, and I'm sure the members will be coming in. This is a busy time in session, which is one of the reasons that we're squeezing this in now on relatively short notice, is in order to make it happen. Maybe I'll just note that that members of the public should be directed to the Legislative Coordinating Commission website, where there are some meeting materials, and one of those items is the legislative the legal charge for our task force, and members who are in the room here have that in front of them physically, and folks online do as well. This task force was actually charged with meeting as early as last summer. And so part of the reason that we were pushing for a meeting on relatively short notice today is to make sure we at least would fit in an introductory meeting, and that's the purpose of the conversation today. So we expect it to be pretty short. What Senator Johnson and I had talked about doing was starting, as folks will see in the agenda, with introduction of themselves and their background relating to this issue of child protection and child welfare and their interest on that. And then we'll have some comments about the plan going forward. I'll invite Senator Johnson if he has anything that he wants to add about kind of the plan for this morning or anything else. Sure, please.
No, thank you, Representative Pinto, for that. This is really something that I think we were both, it's kind of sudden, our involvement with the task force. However, that doesn't mean that we are not committed to seeing a successful resolution and some recommendations that we can put together, because we do realize the significance that this task force has within the state, and the issues that we're dealing with are extremely serious and extremely heavy. So the responsibility is great for us, but really appreciate you reaching out and working together to get this set up, because we do need to get the ball rolling on this. So I appreciate that very much. Like you say, today we're not going to be taking any votes, but I think it's a great way to kind of kick it off and just at least get an overview of what we're going to be looking at here for the next few meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. So my thinking now, members, is we'll dive into those introductions, and maybe I'll start, because then I can provide a little bit of context for the task force as well. I was on a previous version of this task force that met for a couple of years, I think quarterly, several hours a time, and then there's been a hiatus of a couple of years, and then last spring, as you'll see in the document in front of you from our charge, was pulled back together. I work as a prosecutor outside the legislature, specializing especially in domestic violence, sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, and so my work outside the legislature intersects quite a bit with the child protection and child welfare system, and it's a very challenging, complicated area. It's a really, really important area, and so I'm really glad that we're going to be focusing on this in our task force in the coming months. And again, more comments about that, but that's been some of my background in this area. Senator Johnson, if you'd like to go next and share any thoughts, your own experience in this area, and then we'll maybe go to the vice chairs and then to members.
Sure. No, I really respect where you're coming from with your professional work outside the legislature on this. I, too, am an attorney. I do not practice in this area as much, but I do, through the Judiciary Committee and the issues that we're working on there, I know that this is something that is coming up quite a bit, so I'm really glad that we were able to reinstate this. But, you know, this is something that, you know, we will be addressing through these series of meetings. You know, other than that, I really don't have anything more to add on this particular issue. If we want to start with some of the introductions, or however you'd like to do that.
Yeah, why don't we go to the Vice Chair for the House and somebody who has deep expertise in this area, Representative Moran. If you can just share your thoughts.
Good morning, everyone. It is good to be here and good for us to be convening around an issue that is really important to us all. My name is Rena Moran, State Representative from District 65A. I have currently been in the legislature. This is my 6th term. I represent the city of St. Paul right outside of the Capitol. And I am the former chair or co-chair of the Legislative Task Force on Child Protection. This task force really came out of the governor of a response to, I wish I could remember the little boy, maybe his name was Eric Dean, who were murdered at the hands of his mother. And from that incident, the governor created the Governor Task Force on child protection. And some provisions came out of that. I think we have grown a lot from those humble beginnings of how we can keep children safe, how we can work to ensure that the well-being of children is at the forefront of the legislative body, and to do that in a way that does no more harm through trauma that is inflicted on children. Knowing that even when children are removed from their home and they may have been abused, that they still love their parents, right? And so how do we alleviate the trauma that and the impact of that child? So I'm excited that we're doing this initial introduction, and that we are pulling both of the bodies together to keep this issue at the forefront of how we do business. And there are some legislation that is moving through the body this session that is that builds on the great work that we have done in the past. So thank you, and glad to be here today.
Thank you so much, Representative Moran, and glad to have your expertise with us. So Senator Hoffman's just getting settled in here in the room, so maybe we'll have Representative Mueller, if you can share your thoughts.
Representative Patricia Mueller, and I am first-term member that represents 27B. Will turn to 23B. It's hard to get all that switched. Which is my biggest town is Austin, Minnesota, which is known for spam. And so I've been a public school teacher I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, and the majority of my time was in public school. And I was mostly interested in this because I'm a mandated reporter, and I've seen many times where my students are affected by not only what their parents do, but what has happened to them from their parents. And so anytime that I'm able to advocate for my students, advocate for the kiddos who are in vulnerable situations, I want to be able to do that. And as I have grown as a public school teacher, I have seen the increased crisis of mental health both in parents and in children, and I think it's important that we're able to advocate for both of them right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mueller. And Senator Hoffman, we're just kind of doing some introductions and especially interaction with this area of child protection, child welfare. Please.
Good to see you, Representative Pinto, Senator Johnson, Representative Mueller. I would have been here on time, but there's a certain highway I drive on in the morning called Highway 10. I don't know if anybody's driven on that lately, but you know, that's. But I was listening coming in, so it's good to be here. And like Representative Moran was saying, we were part of one of the original reiterations of this plan. My background started in early childhood, and the Early Intervention Services Act, specifically Part C of IDEA, I did compliance for that and also ushered in on a federal level. I served 3 years in the Bush administration on the Federal Interagency Coordinating Council. And the intersectionality of early childhood and child protection comes into play, specifically when you start to look at some of the really horrifying testimony that we heard, and Rena, you remember this, a lot of people that were a part of the system had some adverse backgrounds that I don't think the system really truly understood, and I think that having our collective voice here should be at least some kind of balancing piece to that, to make sure that when we're focused on a child, which is the purpose of child protection, is that, you know, you're supposed to do that filters on the child. You also got to look at the fact that what's the informal support structure that that child has or doesn't have. And having said that, what does that family unit look like? And what are we doing to enhance that family unit? And that's what gets down to, you know, the coordinated, collaborative, and comprehensive care for children and families. And specifically has, you know, we know if we invest in doing it right in a situation like this, that we're actually not going to be paying on the back end of it. So I think when I talked about some of the horrifying testimony we heard, a lot of people with disabilities, I think were kind of dismissed and really didn't understand what their rights, roles, or responsibilities, and the system wasn't doing anything to help with that. And Rena, I'll never forget that. We sat and listened for, you know, a couple hours on that, and went away from that going, the system needs to change. And so get the filter out there, focus on the child, but then also make sure that we're not looking at, you know, we need to look at the intersectionality of what's happening within that child and the family. So it's good to be back on this, David.
Thanks so much for your long work in this area. So I believe that those are the only members that we have. I'm looking at Ms. Breck. We've got a number of folks on Zoom, but I think that's right. And so I'll ask our committee administrators, maybe I'll start with Mr. Carlson, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Ms. Breck.
Hi, I'm Paul Carlson, Senate staff for Senator Johnson.
Okay, and Ms. Breck.
I'm Sydney Spreck. I'm the committee administrator for Chair Pinto's Committee on Early Childhood Finance and Policy, and also the CA for Chair Richardson's Education Policy Committee.
Thank you. And then Will Golding, if you want to introduce yourself, and we'll go to, oh yeah, come on up, please. Yeah, come on up to a microphone. And then we'll have Mr. Doslin.
I'm Will Golding. I'm Senator Johnson's legislative assistant.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Doslin.
Morning, everyone. My name is Hans Doslin. I am Representative Pinto's committee legislative assistant, and with some personal background, I used to work in at-risk and homeless youth world for about 6 years. Was a mandated reporter, and this work is definitely of interest to me, and I know how important it is as well. So I'm excited to see this task force convening.
Thank you, Mr. Doslin. And we'll continue with member introductions in a second after we let Senator Matthews get settled in. But Ms. Sunderman, I think you're with us from House Research. If you want to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sunderman from House Research. I cover human services and child protection issues.
Okay, thank you. And do we have somebody from Senate Counsel's office joining us? I don't know if we do. Oh, pardon me. Ms. Alici, pronouncing your name correctly? Perhaps?
Yep, I'm Allie Hoffman-Litchie, and I'm Senate Counsel for Health and Human Services.
Okay, thank you. And then Priyanka Primo, I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Good morning. Yes, Priyanka Primo, and I cover civil law and data practices issues for the Senate.
Okay, terrific. And then Ms. Bisbee, Carol Bisbee, I think you're with us. I may be wrong. Perhaps not. Okay, Ms. Bisbee's with the Legislative Coordinating Commission. I'll just say there was a lot of confusion when we got appointed to this task force. We realized we had to have meetings quickly, and then figured out it was the LCC that sort of provides the infrastructure to get out, because our staff had to figure out how do you get out meeting notices, what do you do? That's the LCC that provides the infrastructure for that, so we're grateful to Ms. Bisbee. And I think Michelle Weber, though, may be joining us from the LCC, if you introduce yourself, and then I'll go to Senator Matthews after that. Ms. Weber, you
Good morning, members. I'm Michelle Weber with the Legislative Coordinating Commission, and I'm the executive director there. And yes, we're happy to help with the postings and meeting information and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you for your help, Ms. Weber. You've been invaluable on, I know, what turned out to be short notice, shorter than we'd hoped. So Senator Matthews, we've just been introducing ourselves and especially our background with this area of child protection, child welfare. So welcome, and please.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Andrew Matthews, Senator from District 15. My hometown's the Princeton area, and I have all our pieces of 6 counties in the east central Minnesota area. And I've dealt with several constituent cases on this issue. They usually are really tough situations by the time someone reaches out to the legislature on this. Been privileged to be on this task force for multiple terms and have really listened keenly to stories that have been shared and have been very interested in trying to find ways that we can help make this better for families that are going through these difficult times. And we're able to pass some good legislation through the Civil Law Committee this year that helps address some of that. So with that, glad to be here, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Matthews. And so I think we've now heard from all the legislative staff. Anybody can correct me if that's wrong. But wanted also to just get introductions from the DHS staff that we'll be interacting with in our work. I believe Commissioner Brown is on, and then several of folks who work with her. So maybe Commissioner Brown, introduce yourself, provide any thoughts, and feel free to turn things over to other staffers. I think maybe Jamie Sorensen and Jennifer Sommerfeld and Autumn Baum are on as well. But Commissioner, please.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. Thank you for inviting us here for this introduction. I'm Tiki Brown, Assistant Commissioner for Children and Family Services, and part of my administration covers child safety and permanency. And so just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to join you and just echo some of the thoughts that have been shared already. I think, Representative Moran mentioned a great deal of progress, and we're excited to share some of that with you if we have that opportunity, as well as I think, many opportunities as have been referenced as well. So I'll keep that at that and turn it over to Jamie Sorensen, who's the Director of Child Safety and Permanency.
Yeah, Mr. Sorensen, please.
Good morning. I was with Child Safety and Permanency in 2014, 2015, and have worked with a lead group of staff and legislators and community members across the board to do the best that we could to procure the resources needed to implement many of the task force recommendations. As you may recall, the task force back in 2014, 2015 focused on the part of the continuum of the child welfare system pre-court. And there were three primary work groups that focused on the work: screening and transparency work group, family assessment adequacy resources work group, training and supervision of practice work group. And so many of the recommendations came from those work groups. And as we implemented, we, as a matter of routine, were providing updates and progress reports on implementation status of the various recommendations. So looking forward to understanding the focus of this particular legislative task force effort and the information that we can provide and new recommendations for improvements to the system that arise from the conversations from these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. And we'll be, I couldn't resist thinking, as you said, that you're looking forward to seeing what direction we take things, that we'll be interested to find that out too, as we're going to figure this out together. So I believe Ms. Sommerfeld, you're on as well. Please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jennifer Sommerfeld, and I am the Legislative Director for Children and Family Services, which includes child safety and permanency. And I've been in this role for, I think, 6 or 7 years. So it's a topic I enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all of your work in this area. I think you're the person that I've interacted with the most with. And Ms. Baum, I think you're on.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Autumn Baum, and I am the Legislative and Policy Lead for Child Safety and Permanency. I'm super happy to be a part of this committee and supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody, that was a long list of introductions. If there's anybody who I'm missing, please, somebody speak up. I think Senator Johnson, are you aware of anybody else that I'm missing?
I'm not.
I think
we've got everybody.
got a big thread. So
longer list than I was even anticipating. So it's good.
Indeed, I think it's good for folks to us to hear from the agencies and otherwise. So I can have a few comments, but I don't know if there's something that you want to say at this point, or.
No, I think at this point, we've gotten through the introductions, we've made a few comments on that. Probably we'll need to be talking here shortly after this meeting closes out and figuring out when we can possibly schedule another one, but that's a conversation we'll probably have to get together with staff and figure that out, so.
Yeah, I think, so I'll maybe just note, Senator Johnson and I had talked earlier, and you correct me please in any of this, that folks will notice on the law in front of them that the appointments were supposed to have been made in the first meeting as of last summer. That was missed. We were appointed relatively recently. That's why we had rushed to have a meeting pretty quickly now, squeezing it in at a point in the session we thought that we could, just for introductions. What we've discussed is the thought of having meetings on a pretty regular and somewhat more frequent schedule than we might have otherwise in order to kind of catch up. And so starting in June, and what we discussed was meeting as often as monthly, though I would think that we could do that and would expect to do that in a virtual format to make that easy. And likely the first few meetings being kind of laying a foundation so that those of us who have less familiarity with the system would understand the past work that's been done. It's referenced in the law that we have. And then we can begin to identify a direction to go. I think if you look at the recommendations, at the charge that we have, it's really quite broad, and we probably can't do everything in theory that could be possibly done under these areas, so we'll need to figure out where we want to prioritize. So that's what we had talked about as being kind of the overall plan, was to get introductions in, a quick check-in now, but then start our work in earnest on a pretty regular schedule. We discussed, again, something like that monthly, at least for a little while. So hopefully that's helpful, but any comments or additions on that, Senator Johnson, please?
No, I think you summed it up wonderfully, so I think we're good on that point.
Good. And we'll just see if there's questions then from members at all, or anything that the folks want to add from the members. Yep, Senator Hoffman, please.
Chair Pinto and Chair Johnson, I guess the overall question, it's nice to see Jennifer Sommerfeld on here, and lots of interactions this year. There's who's going to lead the process of all the recommendations in here, right? When you look at specifically in the conclusion that after all 93 recommendations have been laid on the table, is this the task force responsibility to lead in the legislative changes, or is the department going to be the one bringing that stuff forward? How do you see that happening from the perspective of work going forward? And not to put Jennifer Sommerfeld on the spot.
Well, I'll maybe just note, because I feel like we've kind of backed into this, so I want to make sure it's really clear to members of the public and members who are looking. So also in the packet, in addition to our legal charge, is this Governor's Task Force on the Protection of Children final report and recommendations from 2015. So I just want to make sure we're super clear that, as Representative Moran had referenced, there was this task force that came together, I think it may be 2013, in response in particular to a really horrific death of a little boy, Eric Dean. And so a lot of work was done by many folks to produce this recommendation, this report and series of recommendations. Then there was a task force that came out of that, legislative task force, again, that I served on, and several of us as well. We've had this break and now together. And so Senator Hoffman, I think we're going to need to see that a bit. I guess I'd like to see if Senator Johnson has thoughts, or Ms. Sommerfeld. But these recommendations are now 7 years old. So to a certain extent, we need to see where things stand on them. But we may need to, and our charge is both relates to these recommendations, but it's also a lot broader than that too. But I don't know, Senator Johnson, any thoughts that you may have on this?
Yeah, and thank you, Senator Hoffman, for the question too, because I think we need some clarity on that as well, because I think that we've all got a part to play on whether this is going to be if there's some legislative actions, which of course we're going to be able to take, or else, if there's going to be some policy that we need to be working through the governor's office as well. So that's something that's going to be clarified through this process a little bit more too. So thank you for that question.
Would you like comment from Ms. Sommerfeld, Senator Hoffman?
And I jokingly say to put her on the spot because that's, she's always in Senator Abler's committee, right? Senator Matthews, it's kind of like, oh, Jennifer Sommerfeld's here. What are your thoughts?
I suspect.
What options exist out there in DHS land, Jennifer?
I suspect Ms. Sommerfeld feels that sometimes herself. Ms. Sommerfeld, any thoughts that you have on that question?
Mr. Chair, I have to have Senator Hoffman repeat the question because I wasn't quite tracking what I'm going to respond to.
Please, Senator Hoffman.
Ms. Summerfeld, thank you for being here, because it's like old home week here. As we looked at the 93 different recommendations that the task force report puts in, there's some really good recommendations here that need to come through the system, whether it be, like Senator Johnson says, it's something that's administratively, policy-wise, or it's something that is legislatively, which comes from us. My question is, who's taking the lead on that? Is that something that your office is doing or should be doing or has done? I know you have taken parts of this task force and brought it forward, and I know we had a couple bills this year that ended up going to Senator Matthews' committee from our committee and are now, I think, part of the omnibus bill structure. And so if you could just give me some options there for us to consider.
Ms. Summerfeld.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So I think Child Safety and Permanency and DHS, we are in charge of implementing any changes from the recommendations from the prior task force. We have done significant work in that area, and we're happy to have conversations about that going forward, but we have been over time implementing as many of them as we can, and that we believe are going to keep children and families safe and ensure that there's a possibility for children to be reunified with their parents if that's what's in their best interest, supporting family structure.
Senator Hoffman.
So it sounds like, thank you, and that's what I just assumed, that it's coming mostly from the department where these are going to be implemented. Is that my understanding? Clearly the spotlight's on DHS.
Ms. Summerfeld?
That's correct. Some of them would probably require legislation, but we've done a great deal of effort in this area, thanks to the legislature over the past few years, to implement the key elements of those recommendations to ensure child and family safety and continuity.
Thank you, Ms. Summerfeld. Senator Hoffman?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you. That just, it's coming full circle now, how the flow is working. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. And I'll note, I mean, again, if folks are looking at our legal charge, I mean, it really, there's a lot there. We're not going to be able to do everything. And I guess I'll say, if you are watching this either live or recorded, you are probably a child protection, child welfare nerd, which is a really good thing because they need your advocacy and your championship. And so I would encourage folks to feel free to contact us with recommendations as to how we focus our work, how we do this, because there's a lot. I just want to call out to folks that Clause 5 in the area directed us to evaluate current statutes governing mandatory reporters and consider modifying mandatory reporting requirements, including youth recreation programs, and introduce legislation by February 15th, 2022. Well, of course, we're having our first meeting now, so it's challenging. I mean, we're in a spot where we're doing our very best with what we have, and I really want to encourage members, of course, but then members of the public as well, to feel free to reach out to us as to how you suggest that we prioritize our work, that we and where we focus things. So, are there any further questions? Oh, Representative Moran has her hand up. Representative Moran, please.
Mr. Chair, Chair Pinto. So yes, I think, you know, as we as a task force wrap our mind around where we were, where we've been, and then where we're going, in regards to the original 93 recommendations, and whether or not we need to stay on that path, or there's others, you know, as time move on, we become smarter, you know, things changes if we need to also change with the time. But I think it's important that we have that history, right? So that we're grounded on some of the history and the legislations that has been done, that has been carried out by DHS. And what did that mean and what that looked like, recognizing that child and family safety is at the forefront of how we do our work, and that we're coming from a very comprehensive, trauma-informed, evidence-based practices, right? And so there has been, you know, we have a lot that has been done, but I'm sure there are still things that needs to be done to make sure that we are doing the least harm, right? The least trauma with these families and children. And we're keeping it through the lens of, you know, child and family safety and what that looks like. And going upstream, you know, because we spend so much money reacting to things that happen, and we can go upstream and really create a structure that is keeping children safe and family healthy and strong, and wrapping around services so that we can have great outcomes. So I just wanted to share that we are a committee, a task force that is informed on the past, but also where we are today.
Thank you, Representative Moran. And I know you've been involved in this work for a long time, including on those past efforts. We have your co-vice chair, Senator Housley, has joined us. And Senator Housley, we earlier just had done some introductions in terms of our own experience and interaction with this area of child protection, child welfare. If you could please introduce yourself. Glad to have you.
Hey, hi, how are you? Thanks. I'm driving, so I'm not going to put my camera on. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I thought this started at 9. Did it start at 9 or was it earlier?
It was, Senator Housley, there was a little bit of confusion and back and forth with timing. It was briefly going to be at 9. So no problem at all. We're so glad to have you with us.
Okay.
No problem. Please, just any background you may have with this area.
What room are you guys in?
We're in Capitol 120.
Yes. So you know what? I'm just gonna listen in here for a little bit, and I can chime in a little bit later. Okay?
Okay, no problem though. I think we're pretty close to adjourning. So maybe.
Oh, geez, I am so sorry.
No. It's just fine, Senator Housley. So I'll just note that Senator Housley and Representative Moran are the two vice chairs of the task force. And Senator Housley, just to catch up, we just did brief introductions of members and staff. And then just talked a bit about kind of the direction the task force is going to be going. This is a very brief meeting that, to be candid, at least on my part, was because we realized that we had been appointed late enough to miss some earlier deadlines and thought this was a time that we could snag in session. We could be confident some folks could join us. But we will get going in earnest starting in the summer. And we'll be in touch with your staff. Yeah. Getting that
Thank
going.
you. Good to see you yesterday, and we can catch up when I get in there today. All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Good. Is there anything else from any members at all? And Senator Johnson, anything else from you before we adjourn?
No, I thank you for doing the legwork here on this morning's meeting, getting things organized for this. I know, especially on the first meeting, trying to figure out who all the players are, get them together in the room. So thank you and to your staff here for the work that you guys did there on doing that. But I'm looking forward to our further meetings on this. I think this is really something that I'm excited about getting into the meat of and actually working on. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Representative Mueller, you got something?
Thank you, Chair Pinto. I would just ask that as we did these real crazy brief introductions, if we could get kind of a structure of who is at DHS and what they do and everything like that, just for people to have some idea of who they are. Because I take notes as much as I can, but I didn't catch everyone's name or what they do. So that would be great.
Representative Mueller, thank you. That's a great first suggestion. I want to urge other members and other members of the public and members of the public to reach out to us. I will say, Senator Johnson and I talked about having the first meeting of the task force, hopefully in the first full meeting in June, hopefully being something where we would just cover the basics of how does the system work, what are the players, what are their roles, et cetera. So that is great. So we've got that recorded and we'll get that out to you and to everybody, and really want to urge other members and members of the public reach out to us with suggestions as well about how we do this work, because it's really important and there's a lot of it. So not seeing any other hands, anything else, so look out for the next notice, hopefully with much more notice than this time, and a longer, more substantive meeting, but it's been good to get this introduction in the meantime. So with that, thank you so much, everybody. The meeting is adjourned.